What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we got a fun one. We got a battle of the Sophisti-pop artists, particularly Swing Out Sister and the Style Council, brought to you by a friend, longtime supporter, and music savant, I dare say, and Cat Dub. Thank you, and Cat Dub. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out that Patreon link below or the Patreon link on the Instagram. We couldn't do it without the patrons. You have to just give a one-time donation or a one-time reaction or any of that stuff. Check out our Buy Me a Coffee page, also linked below. All right, I've been through this whole write-up. I didn't add much. I had one fact to one song because Cat Dub did a masterful job of framing all this up. Not only the artist, the reasoning behind the top 10 list, but also the songs themselves. So these are all Cat Dub's words. Sophisti-pop, short for obviously sophisticated pop, is a pop music subgenre, which, by the way, I'd never heard of, that developed mainly in Britain during the 1980s and early 1990s. It rose out of the synthesizer-heavy new wave club scene, but differed from new wave in its more adult-oriented romanticism, a love for retro soul and jazz sounds, and its use of string and horn orchestrations, both real and simulated. Sophisti-pop revived musical appreciation for keyboardists and orchestral musicians in the pop music world and gave them work, at least for a short period. Perhaps the easiest way to define Sophisti-pop is to point to some of the artists in the subgenre. The first Sophisti-pop album is often said to be Roxy Music's Avalon, released in 1982. Among the other artists classified as Sophisti-pop acts would be the Eurythmics, with Annie Lennox and Dave Stewart, which I think had their first number one, Sweet Dreams, I think was 82. ABC, The Human League, Sade, The Blue Nile, which I have a 5 selection reaction up that Cat Dub did last month, so go check that out after this. Simply Red, Joe Jackson of the later Night and Day album period, and Elvis Costello of the Imperial Bedroom and later periods. I like a lot of those artists, by the way. Even R&B and soul diva Dusty Springfield released a kind of Sophisti-pop album titled Reputation in 1990. She recorded a number of singles with new wave act The Pet Shop Boys, which were big hits, and so recorded an entire album, mostly danceable synth pop. 2 other key artists of this subgenre are the ones we'll be listening to today, which I already gave away, right? The Style Council and Swing Out Sister. With this playlist, I'm going to do something a bit different. Sean will listen to a battle between 2 artists, but we'll be going back and forth between them so that the songs kind of respond to each other and hopefully makes for a nice flow. So yes, there's 10 songs, and I called it a top 10, but it's really 5 battles, so to speak. So we'll kind of treat it that way, which puts a lot of pressure on this guy, man, right? I think I might have heard one of these songs. You know, my little child 80s brain will know it when I hear it. But we'll start out, and Cat Dub says, with Swing Out Sister. If you can imagine the Blue Nile still writing mostly sad synth pop songs and cinematic sounding instrumental passages, but fronted by a charming, sharply dressed woman who happens to look like a Vogue fashion model, you might get an idea of Swing Out Sister are alike. The keyboardist and composer Andy Connell, working mainly with synthesizers and piano, wrote mostly romantic, mysterious, and cinematic sounding scores. He actually favored writing instrumentals and didn't necessarily want to be part of the typical band structure. Connell was working with drummer Martin Jackson initially, and Mercury Records was interested in Connell's compositions, but they insisted he create and record some songs with a vocalist because, yeah, that would be commercial, right? Before he could be signed to a recording contract. Soul singer Diana Charlemagne was brought in to record the vocal demos, which basically sealed the deal. But Charlemagne already had a band, and so Connell and Jackson stumbled onto Corinne Drury, who was looking about for a steady gig singing soulful retro pop. It certainly helped she was capable of creating her own vocal melodies and lyrics to accompany Connell's synth orchestrations. So around the end of 1984, they became a songwriting duo and remained together from that point on. Most people assume that Drury was a fashion model before joining Swing Out Sister, but more accurately, she was a fashion designer who did occasional modeling for designer friends when they were short of someone to hang clothes on. Swing Out Sister's videos and stage presence have always played off Corinne Drury's interest in clothing styles and design in general. I like to call her, quote, the best dressed woman in pop. Drury had her own fashion design business initially, but ended up working for a larger design company to make ends meet. She soon found herself wondering what had happened to her artistic dream when she suffered a life-changing injury. Corinne has a quote here. She says, I'd fallen off a horse and fractured my skull. I was incapacitated. I couldn't move. So with nothing to do but recover, I started scribbling down loads of notes. I was having strange, dark, creative thoughts. I didn't think I was writing lyrics, but they ended up being the basis of Swing Out Sister's first album, It's Better to Travel. Even though I was miserable, the breakout lyrics, their first and biggest single, are positive and defiant. I was trying to write myself out of the situation, create the world I wanted to be in. The song is very autobiographical. I've been a fashion designer, but I got into debt running my own business and ended up working for a high street fashion company. I'd fallen into the trap of doing a job I didn't intend to. Many of us have done that, right? Once you've had a near-death experience, she had initially been in a coma for a week, you think about what you want from life. I'd always wanted to be a singer. Great quote, great quote. All right, let's start off these 5 battles with, of course, Swing Out Sister, their song Twilight World. A long time ago, Sean previously listened to one track from Swing Out Sister titled You On My Mind. So instead of that gem, we'll begin our playlist with Twilight World, the second single from Swing Out Sister's debut album, It's Better to Travel, written by Andy Connell, Corinne Drury, and drummer Martin Jackson. Wikipedia tells us the song was released as a single in the UK in April 1987. It peaked at 32 on the UK singles charts in May of that year. Twilight World was the second single released from It's Better to Travel in the US following Breakout, and it first appeared on the Billboard Hot Dance Club play chart in 1987. It became the group's highest charting hit on that survey, reaching number 9 in early 1988. The song also made the top 40 in the Billboard Hot 100 charts, peaking at number 31, not bad, during February of 1988. So maybe I'll know this, I don't know. The song was remixed a number of times, and the album version is in fact a remix titled Superb Mix, which we're going to hear now. All right. If you haven't ever been with us before, the music won't be in the video, but it'll be a Vimeo link below. So click on that, follow along with us. All right, I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, and Cat Dub. All right, Twilight World. The arrangement on that, the musicianship was absolutely fantastic. Corinne sounded great. And it's basically about, it's not about money. You're kind of going to find companionship in this Twilight World. That's what the song's about, but it just draws you in almost from the start as it builds up. And then the intro, it's not, you've got to really concentrate to hear it. And then we just jump into it. So I don't know this song yet. It sounds familiar. Her voice in parts, especially at the beginning, then I kind of let it play out and it didn't necessarily sound as much like her, but it sounded like Sade at first for a little bit from it. She has those qualities to her voice. So that was really good. It's part 1 of this battle. And Cat Dub says, and now for the Style Council. So we're doing the Style Council. You're the best thing. Paul Weller, leader of the mod punk band The Jam, was at the top of his game, fronting the most successful rock act in Britain in the early 1980s. We have 3 of their albums up, which are fantastic. When he suddenly decided to chuck it all and follow a different musical path, Weller had been too young to participate in the first British invasion, but that hadn't stopped him from revisiting and plundering the musical styles of artists like The Who and The Kinks before all the psychedelia and Baroque orchestral stylings took hold. He seemingly loved straight-ahead hard rock and garage rock and wasn't necessarily keen on the blues either. But after disbanding The Jam, Weller teamed up with keyboardist Mick Talbot in 1983 to record songs that drew from the 1960s American R&B and jazz traditions. Weller as a lounge crooner certainly came as a shock to everyone. Active from 1983 to 1989, the Style Council proved to be more interested in recording singles, of which they released 24, than full studio albums, which only managed 4. They also did do 6 EPs. Still, that's a lot of music for 6 years of service. The AllMusic website describes the Style Council as a vehicle for ex-Jam frontman Paul Weller that set out to combine 80s soul and new wave pop with social commentary. End quote. And that pretty much sums things up, Cat Dub says. Unlike many of the other Sophisti-pop artists, Weller always had a harder edge to his lyrics, although the Style Council will definitely recorded some catchy love ballads too, and those are the songs that got radio play in higher music chart positions. By 1988, the Style Council released 4 albums, but tensions had been growing between Weller and the Polydor record label, when in 1989, the Style Council presented a new set of recordings which reflected Weller's current infatuation with the dance music styles known as house and club. To the band's record label Polydor, the record company rejected the album and dropped both the Style Council and Weller from the label. In 1990, Weller and Taylor formally disbanded the Style Council. We can assume this had more to do with personality issues than anything else, given that their 4th album, which was the Style Council's poorest selling album, actually did make it to 15 on the UK albums charts. So it wasn't ignored. The band was still making money for the record company, but Weller's evolving vision for the project just wasn't appreciated by Polydor. Sean has previously listened to the hit single, My Ever-Changing Mood. So today we'll start with a similar catchy number, You're the Best Thing. Wikipedia tells us this was our 6th single to be released. It was composed, of course, by Paul, recorded at Weller's own studio, Solid Bond Studios, and was released in 1984. second single from their debut album Cafe Blue, released in 1984 as well. Cafe Blue was renamed My Ever-Changing Moods in the U.S. to capitalize on the success of the first single. Spent 5 weeks on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100, only went to number 76. AllMusic says Cafe Blue is Weller's most stylistically ambitious album to date, drawing from jazz, soul, rap, and pop. While it's musically all over the map, it was their most successful album, peaking at number 5 in the UK and 56 in the US. Let's get it. All right, You're the Best Thing. I'll tell you what, this is going to be a tough one to pick a winner of these two. The songs are perfectly matched because in the Swing Out Sister track, it was about, it's really not about money. It's about being together. And that's exactly what this one is. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. He doesn't care about the money or the power. It just doesn't matter. And he really, Paul's really going in on this. He says in verse 2, I might be a king and steal my people's things, but I don't go for that power crazy way. All that I could rule, I don't check for fools. All that I need to be is left to live my way. Say, listen what I say, because you're the best thing that ever happened to me or my world. You're the best thing that ever happened, so don't go away. So the same sort of sentiment. He sounds fantastic in this style of music. The arrangement is so good as well. Just like the Swing Out Sister tune. I honestly have no idea, but I never allow myself to pick a tie, so I won't, but I would like to. And partway through the song, I'm like, I'm just going to call it a tie. Like, I don't know what to do here. I'm going to go with, you can tell how confident I am in this. I'm going to go with the Style Council, You're the Best Thing. I got to note this here. But Twilight World was so good as well. All right. Dang you, ANCAT Dub, for doing this to me. All right, now let's go to the next track. So if you're following along at home, boys and girls, you know it'll be Swing Out Sister. It's the song Waiting Game. ANCAT Dub says it was released in 1989 via Fontana Records as their third single from their second album, Kaleidoscope World, but was not released in the UK. It only made it to 86 in the US on the Hot 100, but did go to number 6 on the Adult Contemporary charts. Pop Matters magazine said Swing Out Sister, now slimmed down to a two-piece following Martin Jackson's departure, pulled out all the stops for a fully orchestrated album that went even deeper into retro sentiment and Bond theme motifs than the debut. It was more challenging, but also more rewarding, as it was characterized by sweeping grandeur, unabashed glamour, high romance, and luscious intrigue. Perhaps as a consequence, its songs didn't succeed as singles quite as consistently as those on the first album, with only You on My Mind rupturing the UK top 40. Regardless of that, it remains as an artistic peak. Perhaps it ingratiates itself more slowly than It's Better to Travel. Once its major acquaintance, Kaleidoscope World's friendship is richer and more prolonged. What a write-up from Pop Matters. Corrine said on this, she said, we were so stubborn as house dance music came into full swing. We decided to return to the golden era of songwriting, complete with orchestral arrangements and vocal harmonies. All we wanted to do was write a timeless classic as the brill-building writers had done in the 60s. The work Jimmy Webb had done with the Fifth Dimension. Lots of Fifth Dimension up that ANCAT Dub brought. Type that up above. Webb produced 2 albums for the Fifth Dimension, The Magic Garden and Earthbound. Inspired us to ask him if he would do arrangements on a couple of our songs. All right, let's go. All right, The Waiting Game. Lyrically, this guy has left her, and she knows she shouldn't be waiting for him. Tells him she's waited too long, but she'll still be here when he comes to his senses, basically. But she is in agony, but she just sits around waiting. Don't do that, boys and girls. It almost never works out, but you really feel it in her delivery. But this song has everything. I'm just going to read you the different. Obviously, we got horns and strings on here, but you've got a glockenspiel. You've got a sax, obviously synths, trombone, trumpet, tubular bells, drumming, programming, right? So we're mixing all of these things together to create this fantastic sound that just drives itself through it. Seems familiar to me again, because I know a lot of the bands that ANCAT Dub mentioned at the start that were part of the Sophisti-pop movement, but I don't know this song, but really, really well done. Going to be hard to beat, but I thought that last time. Waiting Game is going to be taking on the Style Council's Wanted, in parentheses, or Waiter, There's Some Soup in My Flies. It's released as a single in 1987, not appearing on an album until the Best Of collections began appearing. ANCAT Dub says, I'm not able to find any particular information on this track beyond that. It is somewhat dated by its very 80s style production, but a lot of things are, right? And slap bass technique, but Wanted remains a very catchy song. I tried to find stuff on this. I couldn't find it either. All right, let's go. All right, Wanted. That slap bass technique, yeah, I was about 2/3 of the way through, but I mean, it does bring back good memories of when that was on a lot of things. Really well done as well, unless I misinterpreted the Swing Out Sister song. That guy had left her and she's waiting for him to come back. This one's a little bit different. Paul starts out telling us he likes this girl in his office, but he doesn't have the courage to even say anything to her. So as he's living in this in-between world of not wanting to do anything because he's in love with this girl, or infatuated at the very least, but he can't even say anything to her. Because he says, why should it be that my heart's under lock and I can't find the key? Tell me, why should it seem that I'm diving inside without making a try? And then we get that with the background vocals. Why? Oh, well, I only wanted to be, or only wanted to be wanted. And then we get that, why? Oh, well, I only wanted to be wanted. And that really is catchy with the backing vocalist. So another very well paired battle, right? Because lyrically, they're about the same subject in an overarching way. This one is going to go to Swing Out Sister, Waiting Game. So we're 1-1 in this overall battle. All right, now somebody is about to take the lead here, boys and girls. Swing Out Sister, Forever Blue. It was released in 1989, was, ANCAT Deb says, I believe, the fourth single from their second album, Kaleidoscope World. The album reached 9 on the UK albums charts, but this single only went as high as number 80 on the charts. Even so, the track has remained a fan favorite over the years and was very much an indication of how their music would develop over the next few years. Later albums would be less dependent on the kind of electronic beats favored by dance clubs and instead featured a more polished sound, incorporating more experimental elements, small ensemble jazz arrangements, and even big band arrangements. Forever Blue was arranged and conducted by the legendary American singer-songwriter and arranger Jimmy Webb, who we talked about earlier, who was flown to England to create arrangements for 2 of the album's songs. Both Connell and Drury were fans of Webb's songs, but also his arrangements and production for The Fifth Dimension, Johnny Rivers, Glenn Campbell, Thelma Houston, Art Garfunkel, Linda Ronstadt, and Irish actor Richard Harris, whose recording of Webb's MacArthur Park went to 2 in the US and 4 in the UK back in 1968. And Connell and Drury were hoping to achieve a similar, more authentic retro soul sound for portions of their second album. Note that the official music video available on YouTube is a classic bit of 1980s MTV artistry nonsense, or artsy nonsense. It takes me right back to a simpler time in my life. I hear that from ANCAT Deb. I definitely agree with that. I can watch videos and it takes me back to the time because I was born in 1971. It was another great opportunity for Corinne Drury to get fashionably dressed for the camera. Definitely recommend it. I recommend you go check that out. ANCAT Deb did have me check out another one of their vids for a song that didn't make it that was fantastic. So definitely go do that. All right, let's get it. All right, Jimmy Webb really put it on this one, arranging and conducting this, because we have the double bass, the cello, the flugelhorn, the French horn, the flute, the glockenspiel, the harp, the harmonica, as you hear there towards the end, the percussion, the vibraphone, keyboards, of course, viola. So we have violin. We have everything on this song, and you hear it, man. It is so well done, so smooth. And the overarching theme of this one, too, is this guy left her. Why do you guys keep leaving Corinne, man? What's wrong with you guys? And she's going to be forever blue. She's never going to get over it, right? Because he's not coming back to her. Nights don't come any longer. Days seem to last forever. Nothing you can do bring him back to you, forever blue. So I think the writing on both of these artists is very, very good. So, all right. Style Council going to have an uphill climb, but they have on the first 2 as well. We got Long Hot Summer. It was the lead track of an EP released as the group's 3rd single in 1983. It reached 3 on the UK singles chart and became their highest charting single. It features an iconic soul-style synthesizer bass riff that repeats pretty much all the way through the song. We'll be listening to the shorter edited single mix rather than the extended album mix, which was 7 minutes and 3 seconds long. The recording also features a 1980s style clap track that will drive anyone insane after 7 minutes. So believe me, I'm doing you a favor. I appreciate that, ANCAT Dub. I definitely did enjoy that synth bass riff that went through there. And I was very aware of it at the start because it's the last thing I read that ANCAT Dub said. But the clap track was driving me nuts at the start of the song. Then as the song went on, I kind of didn't notice it. And then I noticed at the end as Paul's vocals kind of faded out. So I'm glad it wasn't 7 minutes. But it's a really good song. The longer each one of these songs go, the more I like it, the longer it gets into it. And that is the mark of a really well put together, produced, arranged, written song. This one's really well written as well. Unlike Forever Blue, where Corinne has been left, Paul's kind of the one doing the hurting. No matter what I do, I'm going to end up hurting you. And he's just kind of conflicted. He's out walking at the start. So another great pairing. Not that I expect any different now that we're this far through this, or I would have expected it anyway coming in. ANCAT Dub, but I'm going to go with Swing Out Sister, Forever Blue. So they're up 2-1. We got 2 battles left. Let's go to Icy Cold as Winter. I mentioned that Swing Out Sister could be less pop and more artsy at times, usually only in Connell's instrumentals, though. But here's a vocal track that fits that artsy description. It's one of the unknown gems from Swing Out Sister's fifth album, Shapes and Patterns, which was released in 1997, some 10 years after their debut album. In his review of Shapes and Patterns, the music writer Quentin Harris says, quote, "The LP as a whole was a testament to Swing Out Sister's gift for reviving the techniques of their muses, the Fifth Dimension, John Barry, of course, composer of the James Bond films, Dusty Springfield, Burt Bacharach, and the present day. The non-single album track, Icy Cold as Winter, seems to be intended for the group's many Japanese fans. Swing Out Sister is actually a bigger seller in Japan than the UK. Sales data indicates they've sold 500,000 albums in Japan compared to 400,000 in the UK. The band's popularity in Japan is so strong they have a substantial touring schedule there and released several remix albums exclusively for the Japanese market. It's worth noting that the group began using Japanese musicians in their studio sessions for this album and on more recent recordings. All right, man, there is a list of artists who have had great success in Japan and sometimes greater success in other parts of the world. So interesting tidbit there. All right, this song actually ends out this album. It's a good way to end out an album, I think. I just get lost in the soundscape sometimes of Swing Out Sister and Kareen's voice in a very good way. Almost zoning out in a way of just letting it kind of wash over you. This one's very cleverly written because it takes the seasons and takes it through your heartache and what it feels like there. And her heartache is there. Her heart's icy cold as winter. And she tells us, though, that I never even knew your name. So that's kind of an interesting thing in there. But once again, as I would expect, fantastic arrangement, really well done, really well written. All right, it's taking on the Style Council's Down in the Sun. Released in 1985, it's a track from their album Our Favorite Shop. It's a song by Paul Weller, written in English with one verse in French. The lyrics depict a scene in Paris, exploring themes of romance, travel, and a sense of alienation. The track's minimal, unplugged street cafe arrangement helps to create a Parisian atmosphere for the song. This would be Weller's attempt to appeal to the French market, much as the music scene in the UK. You see me smile in this one towards the start. I love Paul's voice. And this one, a much different delivery and much more rapid fire. Now, if you're not up on your French, as this guy isn't, the French verse tells us when we have nothing left, when we have no refuge, when we can no longer run, when we no longer know how. Black is the night, black is my soul, black as the waters in which I sink. So he tells her at the start, now I stumble so fast, rolling into the night. Kiss me quick before I land, and I'm broken in two. Keep me on the right track. Hold my dreams intact, too. I get lost in this place. I get lost. Yes, it's true. So he is struggling with the same thing that Kareen was struggling in Icy Cold as Winter, right? He's sinking down in the river. This one's really close for me, and I wanted to pick the Style Council just to create some drama going into our last battle, but Swing Out Sister is going to win this one for me as well, just slightly with Icy Cold as Winter. But we still got one battle left. And our last offering from Swing Out Sister is going to be Here and Now. And Cat Dub says it's one of the strongest tracks from their Shapes and Patterns album. I particularly like the smooth arrangements and well-crafted production of this 1990s album. The production sound is generally clean, warm, and expansive. The group seems to have found an ideal soundscape for this later period of their career. Kareen Drury's voice is now a bit deeper and mellower. Her vocal technique is noticeably more mature now. The flirtatious enthusiasm of Swing Out Sister's first single, Breakout, has been replaced with a more seasoned and sophisticated approach. And the album's lyrics do seem to reflect the views of a woman dealing with middle age and looking back at her life experiences, rather than those of a young woman looking only forward into the future. Pop Matters magazine said, while the previous album bore traces of Weather Report and Miles Davis, Shapes and Patterns, which reunited Swing Out Sister with the long-standing producer and co-writer Paul Stavely O'Duffy, saw them once more embracing flavors of the Fifth Dimension in their less staid but also less successful peers' Rotary Connection. While its predecessor featured just a small brass and woodwind section, Shapes and Patterns benefited from an orchestra. The album had a staggered release, reaching the UK and Europe a year later than Japan, so back to the Japan stuff. Note that each one of the album's other tunes was a theme written for a Japanese TV series, NCAT Dub says, is for which Swing Out Sister earned a Grand Prix award, a Japanese Grammy equivalent. But I personally rank Here and Now above that track, so here we have it. Note that Swing Out Sister continues to record and perform sporadically, passing their 40th anniversary as a recording act in 2025, and Kareen Drury turned 66 this year. So time marches on for all of us. That it does. Fantastic song. She sounds great. Those vocal harmonizations and runs there at the end are just a nice little touch. The arrangement was really good. The lyrics were good because talking about, you know, getting older and reflecting, but then she found the love and she appreciates it more. Let's just enjoy it right now, here and now, and be in the moment. So really well done. Style Council, though, they're going to have something to say about who wins this one. We have Shout to the Top. We finish up our playlist with the energetic single Shout to the Top, released in 1984. It was featured in 2000 as a part of the Billy Elliot film soundtrack. In many ways, this track is Paul Weller's most successful fusion of the Jam's punk energy and earnest socio-political attitudes with the Style Council's era's jazzy big band arrangements. And somehow, it all manages to sound believable, not affected or pretentious. At least that's this listener's opinion, and Cat Dub says. For me, Shout to the Top and the earlier single, My Ever-Changing Moods, are the Style Council's most iconic tracks. And I found, it's the only fact I found, it appeared on the Vision Quest soundtrack, which would have been maybe 85-ish. So I know this song. I'll know it when I hear it. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I love that soundtrack. I listened to that soundtrack on repeat while I was working on my basketball skills, young in the development of my career there. But this album had Lunatic Fringe. It had a Journey song. It had Madonna. It had all kinds of stuff. All right, that song was so good. Right. I do remember this song. I would fast forward through it a lot. It wasn't really my thing when I was, 13 years old, but it's fantastic. Super, super enjoyed it. Paul sounds great as he did on all of these tracks. Great lyricism. Very close battle like the first battle. That one I went with the Style Council. I'm also going to go with the Style Council here. So I'm going to get to my favorite tracks, which are going to be the winners, but I also got to shout out Swing Out Sister, Twilight World, which was in the first battle, and then, of course, Here and Now, which is in this battle. They would also be on my faves list. I liked all the songs on this thing, but the faves are going to be the winners. Style Council won with You're the Best Thing in this last track, Shout to the Top. Swing Out Sister won with Waiting Game, Forever Blue, and Icy Cold as Winter. Look, I like Corrine a lot now that I've heard these. I liked every single song on here. I liked Paul Weller before this. Loved him on this. So great concept here. Great pairing of songs that all were paired with the same sort of sentiment. And the musicianship on here is fantastic. Just really, really well done. Let me know what your favorites are down below. Let me know what else I should listen to from the Style Council or Swing Out Sister. Go check out the Jam stuff up above, the Fifth Dimension, all this stuff, the Blue Nile. There's all kinds of great stuff on this channel. I know it's a little hard to find sometimes. We got up over 3,000 videos. Just use that search bar. It'll be your friend. Thanks again to Cat Dub. And until next time, guys, I will see you.